Welcome everyone to the captive audience. It is the 25th of November, and you got me live, Kevin Hoare, and we are also very fortunate to have with us live Jeff Eager, who is the former mayor of Bend, a lawyer, investigative journalist in extraordinaire, and the primary author at OregonRoundup.substack.com. And he always has great stuff to share and great social media posts. You should follow him there as well. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be back.
So it's probably the biggest news story right now is the repeal of the gas and transportation related taxes from the transportation bill. And it looks like right now, based on their estimates of how many signatures have been gathered, which they're still coming in, they might have twice as many as they need in order to qualify, which I know the rarefied air of doing such a thing in, what has it been? It's been like 2 weeks max
Yeah,
since they
less
started.
than 2 weeks. I think 10 days.
Yeah, that is quite a because it's hard to do this in 90 days for a lot of things with just grassroots folks, and to be at 150,000 estimated when you only need 78. There's a margin that you have to get of at least 100 just to make sure that when they start canceling people's signatures, they do a sampling technique. And when they do the sampling technique, they just say, I found one person who isn't a voter, cross off 400 people, something like that. And they just throw them. They don't check everything, because apparently that's too hard in the modern era. So now they are going, well, this brought to you by the same people that apparently check every single signature on every ballot to make sure there aren't a bunch of
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I've seen them do that. They scan the signatures on every ballot. I don't know why they couldn't do that with the petition, but
well, and they should fess up that, actually, especially in the large counties, they have some automated thing that's supposed to check it, but the tolerances on it are like they'll literally accept almost anything. So anyway, these are the people that are going to be checking these signatures, but we've got a nice margin. But now we're at the point where maybe we should be thinking what kind of message this sends, because once you start getting up to maybe 200,000, if it were to reach that, and they have until December 30th, I think. You're starting to get into the territory of where they could have done a constitutional amendment to the ballot. And then everybody who signs this really becomes part of a list that you can go back to and say, remember when you signed that? How about you sign this other thing that means that you don't have to sign this all the time again?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's the biggest political story Oregon has had since at least Measure 110. And it could be much bigger than that. Just because it is the gas tax, the way this whole thing has gone down from day one, really, where Kotek and the unions had to exert just maximum pressure even to get the thing through the Democrat-controlled legislature. It took them one try in the normal session. It took the longest special session ever in Oregon to just barely get it across the line by one vote in each chamber. And then it was so unpopular that by the time it came for Kotek to sign it into law, she decided to play this game of waiting to sign it until not quite, but almost the last possible minute, in a pretty transparent attempt to deprive the petitioners of gathering signatures to get it on the ballot. That was a pretty hardball move by her, and I think probably drove some of the success that the petitioners have had turning this thing around. And just from a policy standpoint, overturning the tax and fee hikes would be a big deal, because it cuts off revenue into the state of Oregon. That's what, our whole state government is based on, ever increasing revenue. That's what the whole progressive coalition is based on, is the money that comes off of that process. So anything we can do to stop more revenue from going into that machine, the better. But also, it'll be on the ballot at the same time Tina Kotek's on the ballot, and every Democrat in the House of Representatives and half of them in the Senate are on the ballot in November of 2026, which has to be the worst case scenario for Democrats. Frankly, it's their least popular thing. They all voted for it. It's going to be on the ballot with them. So they're going to have to talk voters into, unless they can change their mind on the gas tax. And I frankly, I don't even know how much they'll try that. But, polling shows 67% of Oregonians are ready to vote to kill it now. And so Democrats, if they're going to win, are going to have to convince some of those people who are very likely to vote to repeal the gas tax to, at the same time they're voting to repeal the gas tax, vote to reelect the people who put the gas tax in place. That's a very difficult political position for someone to be in. That's why I think it is the worst case scenario. Now, what Democrats have going for them is that it's a midterm of a Republican presidential term, and Donald Trump's still pretty unpopular out here, and that's why you see Kotek on down. They just hammer on Donald Trump because that's what they want the election to be about, and that's going to get even more intense now because they're going to have to find a way to distract from this gas tax mess that is going to be on the ballot with them. As it stands right now in November of 2026.
So I've been around long enough with these tax referrals to see the Democrats twice take the tax referral and move the date. Because you're right, it is a worst case scenario for it to be on the general election ballot. So I strongly suspect that they also know history, and they know that Measure 30 that got enough signatures in 2003 they moved it from the general election 2004 ballot to, I think, end of January of 2004. They just moved it up, and they had to have a legislative special session to do it. Those signatures are gathered earlier. This is later. So they would probably at this point have to just do it in February. And I think that's what you were saying in your article is they're going to do something. They're probably going to do it starting February 2nd session, and they could negate the tax so that it doesn't go to the ballot. I think they would prefer to do that than have it go to the ballot.
I would think so.
Just obviate it. They could pass another tax and make them start all over, like eliminate the tax that's being repealed and pass another. I think that'd be stupid because, frankly, all they did is piss off voters when she delayed signing the emergency legislation.
Yeah,
it just created a pent up frustration that is being tapped now. So I think that would be foolish, but I wouldn't put it past them to try and come up with some more palatable way to raise revenue, like some tax on rich people or something that makes them feel like they're going after the millionaires and billionaires, as Bernie would say. And or she'll just start inflicting some cuts, because this will suspend the tax. As soon as it qualifies, then all these taxes and fees are halted from implementation, right? And then they don't have the revenue. And then I almost said Kate Brown, Tina Kotek will then say, well, then we're just not going to plow your snow. And all those road projects, we're shutting them down, laying them all off. We're keeping the $28 million DEI department, though. And, we'll punish the voters for this, or we'll punish you for the people who stood up for you by getting on the ballot.
I think the limiting factor for Democrats to kind of procedure their way out of this thing, either by, changing the date of the election, I think would be that. I mean, because people are already mad about the way they've approached this thing. They're tired. I think they're tired of Kotek playing games with it,
Yeah.
and they know she's been playing games with it, and so I think they probably have a pretty short leash there. So, but you never know. I mean, they could try to push it, and they have every time so far. She's gone right to the brink every chance she's gotten on this gas tax. And the big question is whether she keeps doing that, or she could punt and say, "Listen, we're not. Obviously, people in Oregon don't want this thing. We're not going to do it." And then the funny thing about all this is, what does she do with that threat of layoffs that she has made repeatedly since she started saying we needed more tax revenue? And she said, "Okay, we're going to lay them off if you don't pass it in the regular session. We're going to lay them off." The ODOT workers off right after the session if you don't pass this gas tax. The legislature did not pass the gas tax, and she did not lay them off. And then so she extended it, called the special session. She said that I'm going to have to lay them off at some date when the special session was supposed to be done. Special session was not done, and so she still didn't do the layoffs at that point. And now it'll be really interesting, now that it's pretty apparent this thing's going to get on the ballot. And like you said, it freezes or stops the implementation of the law. So the tax stuff doesn't change January 1st anymore. So that means ODOT doesn't have that revenue, at least until next year. So does she do the layoffs then? Because then, she doesn't have the revenue. It's going to take a long time to get this vote sorted out. What is she going to do? I really don't know. Because my theory throughout is she's the last person in the state of Oregon that wants to lay off a state employee, because that's how her machine operates.
Yeah.
And that's, I think one of the main reasons, if not the main reasons, they ran this tax bill to begin with, was to allow them to hire more folks. So it'll be really interesting to see. They're in a pickle, and it's very unusual in Oregon politics for the Democrats to be in a pickle like this. Like,
but it's their own making. That's what's fascinating, and that's why I think they were fighting with each other over all of this for quite an extended period of time. They had at least two people, one in the House and one in the Senate, who just didn't want to vote for this. Mark Meek, and then I can't remember the other one, but she's in Clackamas. And
Hartman, or no, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And so they didn't have, because they have a supermajority if they get all of the Democrats, but they got one former Republican that's now a Democrat to vote with them, and that got it through the House. And then I guess they had just enough in the Senate in the end. And you know what? Anybody who thinks, geez, I'm a Democrat, but I'm going to vote against this tax, they won't dare force me to vote for it.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, I won't vote for it. And they do. They have a system of brass knuckles and, smoke-filled rooms that they take you back to. And then, Tina's people go to work on you and tell you how you're going to be primaried, and, start pulling out fingernails and stuff like that. And in a figurative sense, of course, we think.
Yeah.
That's how Oregon works under the Democrats. And the thing is, they made a huge mistake at not really even seeking any Republican or bipartisan involvement or support, because that just gave the perfect excuse to say, well, when you need us, we're just not going to be there for you. And that's what they got. It's arrogant.
Yeah, no, the whole thing has been arrogant. And I think we've already seen some fissures in the coalition over this issue. While Kotek was waiting to sign, we reported on, a few legislators that were urging her in pretty direct language to sign,
Yep.
and accusing her of just playing political games, frankly, like literally those words, which is kind of unheard of for Democrats in Oregon. Like they present a united front at all times, and I think part of their strategy is to just appear inevitable, and they've appeared inevitable for a long time, and not have that kind of dissension out there. And now that this thing is going to be on the ballot, I suspect that some Democratic legislators are extremely upset at Tina Kotek. I don't know that. None of them have told me that, but I think there's probably some difficult conversations happening. And the question will be whether Kotek can stick with the brass knuckles approach you were talking about and cajole these folks into doing what she wants them to do, or whether there's actually a public break on this issue. If Democrats are leaning on her, hey, we have to change this in the legislative session, what does that turn out to look like? So it's all the stuff that happens when a governing coalition that never faces any pressure faces pressure, and it's really going to be fascinating to see how they deal with it.
I mean, the thing that they risk primarily is losing the supermajority, and but the people whose seats would be lost are the ones that are going to have a problem with all of this, and so just that's where the brass knuckles meet brass tacks, right? You can't force somebody to vote for something that's going to get them kicked out of their seat. So it really is all based on what the Democrats think is going to happen next fall. The window of opportunity will be almost gone after the short session in February to primary somebody. Like you get one last chance, days, like usually that session gavels out, and then the last people file to challenge somebody in the primary, and that's it. Then after that, that's who's you're running in the general election, unless they resign and get replaced. And that's all they care about. Like this is about Tina Kotek believing that she's going to get reelected no matter what she does, no matter how bad it is. And I think that actually is a good mindset for Republicans, for the Democrats to think that, because then they're doing really crazy stuff. And by the way, there was a lot of grassroots activity and visibility to this. You could see it all over the state. The signature gathering, and of course, Ed Deal is one of the people that's leading this whole effort. And Lars had a good article, by the way, that's just talking about the lie about what she'll do to punish people and all that. So I think it's good. It's good because we're sort of calling them out on the lies. It's like we're going to call their bluff. Like, you go ahead and tell people in the winter you're not going to plow snow. You go ahead and do that, because we're going to tell them that you have the money to do it. You're just punishing them. And it's going to have the same effect that waiting to sign the emergency legislation was going to have. Now, the media won't tell them that. That's the big problem. But that's why this going straight to the people with the petition is starting to wear down that media advantage a little bit. People are starting to see these signs and realize, actually, maybe the governor's not being straight with us.
Yeah, I think what it'll really take to break the media thing, kind of the lockstep media approach for what Kotek's doing, frankly. I mean, they do a decent job of reporting on how bad things are in Oregon, but they don't ever connect it to the people that enact
it has no cause.
It's like, oh, this stuff keeps happening. We keep endorsing progressive Democrats every cycle, and things keep getting worse. What is it? Why? We're confused.
Yeah. I'm doing the same thing, and I'm not getting a different result.
If there are Democrats that come out and vocally oppose her on this thing, that'll start to wear away at the media thing. If there are Democrats, it'll take Democrats doing it,
Yeah.
because the media doesn't care what Republicans say, but it'll take Democrats doing it. But I think the likelihood of that happening right now is a lot higher than it's been in a long time.
Yes. And by the way, there's some other things that are kind of getting mixed in with this because Governor Kotek has issued an executive order for like this climate stuff, which is way low on people's priority list. Cost of living is way, way higher, like near the top, inflation and all that stuff. And so they're picking something that's not that important, even to a good chunk of Democrats, like it's not the top priority, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to go ahead and do this anyway.
I think what happened with that one is so obviously Kotek is happy to do weird climate stuff just to do weird climate stuff. I think there have been 2 executive orders related to climate since the gas tax passed. One is something about like she wants state lands to prioritize climate in how they're managed or something.
Yeah.
Not as consequential as the one that she just issued, which is that she's going to, create new, higher, tougher fuel cleanliness standards that will have the effect of increasing gas prices. We have some of those standards right now, and depending on who you ask, the state of Oregon says it adds 7 cents per gallon. Some private organizations think it's 3 or 4 times that per gallon. And she just announced that she's going to do more of that, which we know from past experience is going to drive up the cost of gasoline in Oregon. Just the timing, but this is where they rely on having a compliant media, right? Like I reported on it. I reported on, hey, she's doing this and it's going to raise your gas prices even more. But, the coverage she got from other outlets was, Kotek takes a bold stand for climate. Of course, the EO won't do a thing for the climate, even using their numbers, their assumptions.
They're not going to literally not move the needle.
Zero. But we're all going to pay more for gas because of it. But what I think she's been doing with this kind of flurry of climate EOs is some of the climate people were pretty hacked off at her for including an electric vehicle tax or fee rather in the transportation tax bill. And you caught some rumblings of it. I think the Oregonian ran a couple stories about it around the time when the gas tax was just about ready to get passed. And then it went quiet. I think she's doing these climate EOs because that part of her coalition, the climate people and the enviros more generally, were mad about the EV fee. So I think it's just her placating part of her coalition by doing these things that are going to cost everyone a lot of money and aren't going to do any good.
Well, and I think maybe there's an element of belief that they have that this is a midterm is just going to be about turnout of your base vote because so many people don't bother voting in midterms. And so they're trying to maximize a group that they already have the support of, but those people need to cast their ballots.
Yep.
And maybe they're sensing that it's not going to be enough for them to just talk about how much they hate and oppose Donald Trump because that's been their whole spiel. Like he's the reason why, and it's ironic because right now, in addition to that, of course, there's the Olympic pipeline shutdown, which is going to cause even more increase in fuel costs. And that's not President Trump's fault. So the tax, the climate stuff, and the pipeline shut down. I mean, they should be happy the pipeline's shutting down. That's going to save the planet,
I know.
Governor Kotek declared an emergency.
Exactly. She issued an executive order to let truckers drive longer so that we can truck the fuel rather than have it go through the pipeline because the pipeline's leaking, all to avoid like a shortage of gasoline and even higher gas prices in Oregon, when she's doing all this other stuff to increase the price of gas. And if you listen to what she says are her priorities, she should want there to be no gas in Oregon because every drop of gas gets burned and then somehow magically creates wildfires. That's basically the extent of her
That's
logic.
right. It's magic. And we all have to believe in it. Otherwise, we are heathens or
Yes.
deniers, etc. Yeah, it's really crazy because she's creating inflation. They're all trying to blame the tariffs, and there really is no evidence so far that tariffs are contributing to inflation. Maybe they will in the future. I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, but it's not happening now. And it's certainly not responsible for all the increase in prices that occurred under Joe Biden that everybody is still unhappy about. They're unhappy that it hasn't come down more, but it's not being caused by Donald Trump. And then when Tina Kotek does what she's doing, she's literally saying, I'm going to make the most basic commodity you need to get around and transportation companies need to transport all the things you buy, including food, and I'm going to make it more expensive in Oregon. And what are we going to get for that? Political benefit, because it's not going to change the temperature of the earth. And then it turns out that as they try to, again, change the subject and assign blame to President Trump and the administration and Republicans, because they can't blame Republicans here in Oregon for anything at this point. That ship has sailed.
Well, they did. They blamed them for walking out.
What's that?
They blame them for walking out. Yeah.
They blame them for walking out when they don't walk out anymore, which is, it's almost like they're relying on, some sort of amnesia about the fact that the law has been changed or the Constitution. But then, it turns out that the economy isn't as bad, at least in terms of revenue, as they forecast. Mm-hmm. So they're starting to see an increase in revenue, but we are seeing a slowdown in Oregon's economy. So right now, there is an increase in state tax revenue that is narrowing the budget deficit that they thought they were going to have to fix. And really the thank you for that one, because they may not have to raise as much taxes as they thought they would have to or make budget cuts, is that they should actually give some thanks to President Trump, which is going to kill them. They can't possibly do it. They will find literally anything else to attribute to that. In fact, they'll credit Joe Biden, even though Joe Biden is sitting somewhere in a coma, drooling off in Delaware. He doesn't even know that he did it. He didn't know he did it when he was in office. And this was the Oregon Watchdog Catalyst guys stuck this up there, and it's like, well, thank President Trump for the increase. It's the national economy is growing, which means that Oregon businesses based here that sell elsewhere are selling to other places. What is troubling is that the Oregon economy itself is starting to see a slowdown. And I just posted something about that because, we've seen companies leaving. We've seen large employers laying people off. We're not seeing jobs come in to replace it. We are seeing homeless people, drug-addicted homeless people coming in to replace the people who leave the state, but they're not bringing prosperity with them. And at least only prosperity for the nonprofits with six-figure executive directors getting state money, but that money's drying up. So it's a real squeeze play for these guys, and they're betting everything on the idea that they're going to gain ground or be invulnerable because it's the presidential midterm.
Well, and you know what? If I had the hand that they have, I would do the same thing, I think, because A, it's worked for them before. B, they don't have anything else to talk about. I mean, if you look at, like, what is Tina Kotek going to run on? Her three top priorities were education, housing and homelessness, and behavioral health. All of those things in nearly every objective measurement in those three categories of things has gotten worse since
Massive
she's
failure.
been governor.
Yeah.
Literally, like it's like if she don't make anything else a priority, like make recessions a priority or something, like make something bad a priority, and the opposite is likely to happen because she has utterly failed at the stuff she promised us she was going to focus like a laser beam on, to the exclusion of everything else.
Yep.
And so she can't run on her record. So she has to find something else. And she'll beat up whoever the nominee is for the Republicans against her. Obviously, she's going to beat the tar out of that person with negative ads. But she also just needs to keep saying Trump. And that's why, today she was posting about some Coast Guard helicopter. Trump's involved somehow, I guess, but I guess he took a helicopter out of Newport and then they sued.
They moved it to North Bend, another 20 minutes away.
Oh, they did? That's all they did was move it to North Bend?
Yeah, they moved it to North Bend. And they're claiming that it is some kind of retaliation for the resistance to the rumored ICE facility at the Coast Guard base in Newport. But they don't have any evidence of that. But they're all concerned about that, just like they're all concerned about apparently the massive numbers of people that are being snatched off the streets by masked ICE officials. There's emergencies declared in counties where they're having emergency county and city meetings to deal with the fact that that federal law is being enforced by federal officers, and they're spouting off numbers which I think are going to have to be corrected. I appreciate that the administration is taking strident action, but they need to do better on communication, because I literally heard Maxine Dexter say in a video the other day that only 20% of the people being picked up have criminal records. 20%. The figure the administration has used is 60 to 70%. The difference is massive.
Yeah.
And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, but of course it's just out of millions that are here. Mm-hmm. And they are insistent. They couldn't give a hoot if some guy, like what happened the other day, and a guy got arrested in Eugene because he was brandishing a rifle and walking through traffic and trying to stop traffic in an area called the Whitaker, in just kind of a quirky area that unfortunately gets its share of crime and stuff and drug addiction. But he was doing that, and they shot him, actually. He's okay. He's recovering, but it was because he was brandishing a rifle and trying to stop traffic. Turns out he was released 2 weeks earlier on his own recognizance with instructions to report to some optional mental health facility in Newport or Lincoln City by a judge. And this is a guy who had multiple arrests and a history of mental illness. And they just let him go and said, "We sure hope you go and do the right thing." He went straight to Eugene, brandished a weapon, threatened people, got shot by the police. And the Democrats have nothing to say about that whatsoever. They don't care. They think it's what the mayor in Chicago said. It's an isolated incident. This woman that got lit on fire, and they don't care. Yeah. Meanwhile, they are literally screaming about people who are not citizens being removed from the country and claiming that it's just a bunch of innocent, like the Maryland Dad, just a bunch of folks that,
good, upstanding people that are doing what they're supposed to be doing and just get snatched off the street. The Oregonian is almost unreadable. That I literally don't read the stories. But just the headlines.
Instantly from the headline.
Every day, like kid's dad coming to pick the kid up at school gets nabbed by ICE. And it's just like iteration after iteration of that same basic story. And I wonder, that plays to the Oregonians audience. I wonder though, like when was the last time someone pulled the question in Oregon? If someone is here in the state illegally, should they be deported? Just that straight up question.
Yeah.
I wonder what the outcome of that question would be.
I'd like to see that question, and then I'd like to see a progression of questions. If they claimed asylum or whatever, and their case was evaluated by a federal judge and they lost, it was not a legitimate claim, and they've been ordered removed, should they be deported? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. It might say something different on that first question. And then the next question, if they have a criminal history or committed a crime here in the United States, should they be deported? And I think you get a different number with each one, but it would be fascinating to look down inside that poll and see the details of that, because I think it would vary by part of the state. But I also think you're going to see there's probably more common sense than Tina Kotek would let on.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's Oregon's a progressive state, predominantly, or liberal at least. But it's being governed way to the left of where its voters are. I think this gas tax thing is a good example of that. Maybe the best example of that. But on thing after, gender stuff, on climate stuff, on immigration stuff, voters voted down the driver's licenses for illegal aliens before the Democrats just passed it anyway. I don't know how that vote would come out now, but we're being led down this path that is way to the left of even where the electorate is in Oregon. And the reason why Democrats are able to get away with it is because the other side of the story is not told.
Yeah, the media just doesn't tell them.
They don't cover it. They don't care. It's not their story. Their story is ICE nabbing the dad in the preschool parking lot. So that's, that the more information that we can get out there that rounds out the information packet that people get, that's where the real breakdown is, I think. Because people know that stuff in Oregon is going wrong, but they don't know how wrong and they don't know why, and they don't know who. Even they aren't reminded repeatedly who, and that's why we keep getting the same people reelected.
Well, this might be why Phil Knight, the Nike co-founder, who's retired, but he, obviously has a nice multi-billion dollar pile of money from founding Nike and so on. He's dropping big money into, now it's for electing Republicans to the state legislature, but it's the single largest donation of all time. I think our entire campaign finance system was created to stop him from donating so much money to Republicans. That's it. That is the only reason. Democrats would have never done it, and they certainly would have never done it if it impaired labor unions from doing whatever they want.
Yep.
But he's donated $3 million to the Bring Balance to Salem PAC. Now, having said that, he's donated in the past. Hasn't exactly worked, but he must have some confidence or belief that something might be, some needle can be moved with this. I think I can think of some other offices that similar amounts of money could impact, such as the governor's race, such as the congressional races that are going around on the state. And maybe the Democrats' narrative for next year isn't entirely sanguine. Like maybe they are missing something. And you mentioned that if you had their hand, you might do some of the similar things. I think the one thing I would not do is throw salt in people's wounds. I wouldn't do the overreach stuff. I'd try to make it look like I was compromising, and then, like the pretend bipartisanship where they get one guy and then they run ads saying bipartisanship because one person got got a bridge in their district or something.
Yep. And I've got to jump here in like 2 minutes, Kevin, but I Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, the cycle we ask ourselves every 2 years is, have the voters had enough yet? And the answer each time has been no. But it's it's not logical. Nothing in politics stays the same, right? We've had the same type of government in this state for a really, really long time, and not just Democrat, but progressive, hard left Democrat control. Um, and maybe that goes on for a while longer, but that is not guaranteed to continue forever.
No.
And things change, and when things change, it's usually the result of a lot of factors combining together that over time chip away at the governing coalition. I happen to think that this gas tax issue is maybe the biggest thing that's come down the pike that's going to erode or can erode the foundations of this coalition that's been driving us into the ground.
So one last story to cover before I know you got to go. You always have followed the Bully stuff with Val Hoyle and the LaMotta stuff, and you've done work on this in the past, and this juicy story emerged that this audit by the Secretary of State of the Bureau of Labor and Industry, which is in crisis, apparently they couldn't hide the fact that it was directly attributable back to the leadership of once Bully Commissioner, now Congresswoman Val Hoyle. What are your thoughts on that one? And of course, I'll post from her opponent Monique Despain the press release that calls her out on all this stuff. It's kind of juicy.
Poor Val. She just keeps getting herself into these scrapes. When I opened that story, because the headline was, something that audit finds Bully sucks. And I was like, yeah, no kidding, Bully sucks. But let me read the story. And then it ends up being a story mostly about how Val Hoyle is the one that screwed up Bully so bad. And I was like, wow, like that. I mean, there's plenty of scandal stuff that's come out about her directly. But here's this other thing that you wouldn't think necessarily would impact her. And here she is. Here she is. And she's not a great congresswoman. She's not a great congresswoman.
No, and had this been the Shemia Fagan era, she would have just gone in and edited out the part that made Val Hoyle look bad, along with her other emerged.
Oh, for sure.
I guess the one good thing we can say about Tobias Read is that he didn't do that. He tried to make it sound like there's no blame being placed here, but geez, if you read it, I think I see some blame.
Yeah, no, that was good on Tobias for letting that go, letting that out in that format. I also think he could have delayed the signature gathering on the gas tax petition, but
still further. Yeah.
No, he got that. He
still wants to be governor. Yeah. That's the answer. So,
yeah.
Well, I know you got to go. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. This is again a fantastic show with a lot of great stuff that we covered, and looking forward to have you on again here in the coming months as it gets even more interesting. And we'll follow you at OregonRoundup.substack.com. You can read all those great articles there and catch up on many of the topics we've touched upon here tonight. Thanks again for joining us, Jeff.
Thanks, Kevin. It was fun.
And everyone, please share the show with everyone you can, and check out Jeff's site and follow us as well on Facebook, Twitter, or I should say X, and Truth Social. We're there too. And we'll see you tomorrow night on the next episode of the